Kofi Bento talks about respectful engagements with us, which was different from what they felt. I would not stand on that comparative point, but I am a bit perplexed and a little disappointed to hear his perspective that what is happening to us is respectful. I find it difficult to accept. So let's talk about those responses which he considers respectful. First of all, let's walk through the procedure through which the government has dealt with our attempts to exercise our democratic right to express our disaffection. Think carefully on the nature of how we were whisked into what was in essence a cabinet meeting. For me, that significantly displeases me. People have a right to their bodily autonomy and to decide where they want to go. We were told after we submitted the letter to the police and they responded that the Inspector General of Police, IGP, wanted to meet us. And in the police convoy to that meeting, where abruptly the location was changed and we're taken somewhere else completely to meet a fully convened team of government ministers. Incidentally, one of the key persons who was missing from that meeting was the Minister for Health. And I think that is significant because COVID-19 has been used as a red herring. And I will perhaps come to that conversation when we discuss sort of the legal issues. Now, I will not address, because of what I've said, I will not address the patently unconstitutional way in which they went during that meeting, same meeting that they had called, to go and procure that injunction from the court. But there's something about it that is interesting to me, because first let me tell you about how we were served with that injunction. And again, people listening can determine for themselves whether this is respectful. So after the meeting, which were being, the government had indicated to us that they were willing to dialogue and that we should consider dropping the demand to go on the demonstration, and so that they wanted to form an interministerial committee. Our representative in the meeting told them that, well, we weren't expecting to have this meeting. We were practically ambushed into the conversation. And so give us a bit of time to engage with the entire audience about how they feel about this idea. And when we left that meeting, the regional commander who had driven us into the meeting, and mind you, the IGP himself was not even in that meeting, said that, can we have another meeting at 3 p.m. to discuss the protest? We said, sure. And so we were still preparing our response to the letter they had given us, because the law gives us 48 hours to respond to it. And then when it was getting closer to that 48-hour limit, we told the police, would it be possible if we can send that to you via email? They said to us, no, we would not receive it by email, but it has to be in person. So what we would do is we would send somebody by convoy, because we need to get that reply to the Inspector General of Police by 9 a.m. the next morning. Unknown to us, the real intention, the reason why they were refusing to receive it was because they wanted to serve us with an injunction they had already procured on our blind side, even though they know who they were dealing with. So does this look like constructive and respectful engagement? Does this sound proper and consistent with our democratic values? Felix talks about, and he says this, I guess, supposed to win himself points and for the previous government, about how they have been more tolerant. But he talks about the police sitting in a meeting with government to decide whether or not to allow citizens to protest. And in his telling of the story, he sees this, I think, as evidence of some enlightened response, of some tolerance. But let's reflect on it carefully. Is it consistent with our constitutional promise that the government will go and take instructions from the government to decide whether or not citizens should be allowed to exercise their democratic rights? If the police have a grievance, the police should be able to tell us why, for whatever reasons, they, the police, would not be able to meet the requirements of the Public Order Act to provide security. And tell us that. And when we respond, they can go to court. The Attorney General can also make a representation in that proceedings and give a government perspective. That is how a democratic conversation is had. Does this reveal to you a sense of respectful engagement? Let me talk about the point which we have been hesitant to talk about for so long, because the point which we are considering taking legal action on, because it's very important. And for me, it breaks my spirit and even undermines my belief in the democracy we live in. When we went to that same meeting, the national security insisted that our representatives could not go into the meeting with their phones. And so they took the phones from them. Again, we weren't expecting that meeting. When we left out of that meeting, we have credibly established that one of our representatives, the only person who was using an Android phone, his phone was cloned. And that all the messages and the conversations we were having on our platform, he could no longer access it. And so what we did was we flashed his phone immediately. And it turned out to us that since then, even this we discovered just this morning, that calls from his phone were being diverted to another phone. We have that number, and we'll put that online. When we search for it online through Truecaller, it is called monitoring on Vodafone. That's how it is registered. Now, under the circumstances under which the government has mounted an unlawful surveillance against people who have given just notice to voice their protest on the streets, having participated in any illegal activity. In fact, the fact of giving notice to the police.
That's a suspicion. We must say so. That's a suspicion, correct?
We are going forward, and we're going to put this transparently in the public domain, and we're going to sue. And we are going to have the police and the telecom authorities involved give that information to the courts under the circumstances under which the government, how we believe, has broken civil liberties of people by subjecting us to unlawful surveillance. Now, this is a critical point, and it goes to the heart of our constitution. And I said this, again, not being an alarmist, but also very particularly mindful of the legal implications of what I'm saying.